Okay, Little Legends, The Spell Thief, Chapter 4, titled A Secret Meeting. By the time Jack got back to the palace, Betsy was nowhere to be seen. In the end, he found her by the farmer's cottage on the edge of town, her head deep in a huge bucket of grain. The farmer was quite nice, really, but his wife was another matter. She always carried a huge old carving knife that she waved around when she got angry, and she got angry a lot. Nearly every mouse, blind or otherwise, within 500 feet of their cottage was missing a tail, an ear, or in some cases a leg. A few ex-mice were even missing heads. She had made it very clear to Jack that if he ever caught Betsy eating their corn again, the farmer would be having hen burgers for dinner. Jack tiptoed into the garden, grabbed Betsy, and slipped away quietly. As they walked back into town, Jack told Betsy about what had happened in the woods. "Honestly, Betsy," he said, "I swear I saw Anansi talking to an imp in that tree." "What?" "Exactly. That's just what I said." "What?" "No, none of them believe me, not even Red. She thinks I'm just being mean." "What?" "Well, yes, of course. I need proof he's up there. I need to show something. But how?" "What?" Jack's hand suddenly clamped Betsy's beak shut. Her beady eyes glared up at him angry. "Sorry, Betsy," whispered Jack. "I can see Anansi just ahead." "What?" said Betsy very quietly. "Yes," muttered Jack. "He's on his own." Jack hid behind a large barrel and peered around it, trying to see what Anansi was up to. The boy was sitting on a bench by the woods, to the west of Tailtown, leaning back as though he was trying to look relaxed. Jack watched and waited. He didn't know what he was waiting for. It was just that something didn't feel right. Nothing happened. Jack's legs were getting pins and needles, but still he waited. He waited for so long that he started to wonder if he might have been wrong. He was just trying to figure out how to walk away without looking like he'd been spying when something finally happened. A spider was struggling across the ground with a rolled up piece of paper tied to its hairy back. Anansi swiftly reached down and untied the paper. He inspected it for a few seconds, then patted the spider gently on the head and looked carefully around. Then stood up and walked away. "What's he up to now?" Jack whispered to Betsy. He waited until Anansi was almost out of sight and then sneaked after him. Half an hour later, they were deep in the forest outside Tailtown. Anansi jogged quickly along the narrow path while Jack stumbled and tripped behind him, trying to stay out of sight. Betsy was cradled under his arm, on strict instruction to stay completely silent, not to move, and basically to act like she wasn't even there. In the air in the dark woods was thick and damp. Twisted trees rose up overhead, covered in so much moss that it was hard to tell where the ground stopped and the trees began. Anansi stopped in front of a fallen tree. The roots rose above him like huge dead claws. Jack scrambled into a ditch to hide. He placed Betsy on the ground beside him and peered out. It wasn't long before he saw a small blue-gray shape with pointed ears scamper along the fallen tree trunk and land at Anansi's feet. Jack's eyes narrowed. It was the same imp he'd seen in the tree. Anansi looked serious. There was no trace of the easy smile he had worn earlier. He spoke sharply to the imp in a language that Jack couldn't understand. The imp nodded, then ran out of the clearing, returning moments later with, "No, it couldn't be." Jack's mouth hung open. Walking into the clearing was a troll, a huge, great, hulking beast of a thing. Just one of its hands could completely surround Jack's head, and its thick arms looked frighteningly, crushingly strong. The creature's eyes burned with darkness. Its pockmarked skin was scaly and glistening in the dim light. Jack looked on in horror as Anansi smiled and ran forward. "Anansi!" exclaimed the troll in a voice like boulders being crushed together. "It's so good to see a friendly face." "Rufaro," said Anansi, reaching up to embrace the troll, before stepping back to regard it properly. "How have you been? You're looking good." For a moment, the troll stared blankly at Anansi. Then Anansi grinned, and the troll's huge mouth split into a broad smile. Still like a joke, I see, the troll bellowed, slapping Anansi on the back so hard that the boy was jolted forward a few paces. So, your little friend got my note to you. Yes, replied Anansi. You could have found a larger spider, though, or used a smaller piece of paper. The poor thing looked exhausted. The troll smiled. Now tell me, do you have the potion? Is it safe? Anansi nodded and pulled out a small bottle full of glowing silver liquid. The troll looked pleased. Well done, Anansi. I knew you could do it. So, tell me, are you alone? Did anyone see you come here? No, replied Anansi with a hint of pride. No one would have been able to keep up. Good lad, replied the troll with a grin. We have a lot to discuss. To be on the safe side, I'll get the imp to cast a hiding spell. The troll spoke a few words in the imp's language. The imp nodded and traced a shape in the air with its fingers. Anansi and the troll continued their conversation, but with each word it was getting quieter and quieter. Jack could hardly hear anything they were saying now. The whole clearing suddenly flickered before his eyes and then vanished, taking Anansi, the troll, and the imp with it. It was as if the rest of the forest had rushed in to fill the gap where the clearing had been. Jack stayed crouched in the ditch for a long time, trying to make sense of what he'd just seen. Anansi was friends with the trolls, or perhaps he was even a troll himself, disguised to look like a human boy. But why were the trolls planning another attempt to take over Tailtown? Jack picked Betsy up and crept silently out of the ditch, making his way back toward town. He had to warn Red and the others that Anansi was working for the trolls. The future of Tailtown could be at stake. Before he could do any of that, though, he needed some answers, and he knew just the place to go get them.